How's everybody doing? Hope you're doing very well. Grab your coffee, sit back, and relax. We're going to continue our series. What's going on over here? What's going on over here? Hold on. We're going to continue our series on builds heading into 9.2 for Shaman, right? We're looking at different legendaries, and we're trying to ask ourselves, what can you bring into 9.2? And if you're going to bring it into 9.2, what does it look like? What do you have to... what stat priorities you have to think about? What combinations are good? What covenants / soulbind should you run? Where should you craft your legendary? Like on what piece of gear should you craft your legendary? That's a really important one as well, because there are some changes happening there. Let me just pull my notes up here. You guys get comfy. Where to craft? I forgot to write down. Lego. Got it. Okay, so here we go. Let's start out. We're gonna talk today about Skybreakers, of course. Oh, let me pull this up over here. Let me pull this up. Let me do this. Why do I never get this stuff ready before I start? I don't know why. I'm just so excited to get out of the gates. Okay, we're ready now. We're ready now. It's not even. I was always ready. It's not even a problem. Not even an issue. Okay, here we go. We're gonna talk about Skybreakers. We did Legacy of the Frost Witch yesterday. We are moving on to Skybreakers today, which of course, as we know, is an elemental shaman legendary. So let me talk very first. What does this legendary do? Why are you running it on enhancement shaman? Have you lost your mind? Yes to all three of those. Okay, number one, this basically says your flame shocks deal 50% more damage. That's all it does for us. We don't care about fire elemental. We don't have a fire elemental, right? So your flame shocks crit, sorry, not 50%, your crits are 50% higher. You have 50% higher crit chance for your flame shocks. I'm just butchering this entire thing right now. That's okay. 50% more crit chance on flame shock. Well, why is that good? Flame shock has traditionally been a very dead ability for enhancement shaman. It's not that you don't cast it, but it's not a mainstay of your damage. This is not why you're playing Enhancement Shaman. We talk, most of it is about Storm Strike. Most of it is about Ascendance. Most people have been playing Doom Winds, right? Which is all about Wind Fury Weapon. It's all about that kind of damage, right? Wind Fury Totem, Wind Fury Weapon. That's the style that Enhancement Shaman has been running for this entire expansion. And let me tell you, this is about to change. So, it's not that you can't run Doom Winds. We'll talk about that in another build. But this build is really, really cool because of what Skybreakers does. Flame Shock damage over time crits, reduce the cooldown of Fire Alley, and Flame Shock has a 50% increased critical strike chance. So here's what ends up happening. Flame Shock ends up becoming an enormous part of your damage. An enormous part of your damage. Your sheet is going to start to look something like this. Rather than looking like Crash Lightning, Chain Lightning, and Storm Strike, or Ascendance, or Wind Fury Weapon being the top one, you're going to see all these fire buttons being in the very, very top, and Flame Shock is going to be number one. Look at this dummy testing that I did. Look on the right-hand side. My Flame Shock crit 80% of the time, and it hit normally 20% of the time. That's what you can expect to see. Now, what does this do for us? Why would you run an elemental legendary that gives your flame shock 50% more crit? Who cares? The reason you're running it is because it's going to slightly change your stat priority. It can actually shift your stat priority into mastery. I'll talk about why you're going to run in a second, but let's just focus on stat priority for a second. You don't need to run crit with this build because you get 50% flat extra crit on your flame shocks. It's not that you can't run crit, but you don't have to. You could run Mastery instead and just get more damage. You can get way more damage, okay? And that's something that I think will be a very prevalent moving into 9.2. I think that all these different fire builds can switch over to Mastery and be very happy about that. I think that that's okay, because your crits are going to be primarily coming from Flame Shock, and it's going to do the bulk of your damage all on its own. You don't have to invest more stats into it. So I think your stat priority could easily shift into Mastery. Mastery gains a tremendous amount of value in these kinds of builds because it just gives you more fire damage. So let's look at the talents, tier set interaction, and the covenants, and then we'll get into the strengths of this build and the weaknesses of this build, why you would run it, right? So first of all, the talent choices that you're going to make, of course, it's the trio of fire spells that we haven't been running ever. You're going to go Lashing Flames, Hot Hand, Fire Nova. This is the core right here of what you want to be doing in this build. You're going to be starting with a Flame Shock, on one target, you're going to spread that Flame Shock with Lava Lash. So now it's on 4 targets. You're going to detonate your Flame Shocks with Fire Nova. That's the rotation, baby. 1, 2, 3, bing, bang, boom, and you're done. Flame Shock, Lava Lash, Fire Nova. Boom, boom, boom. And you want to be spreading as many Flame Shocks as you can because it'll get more Fire Nova value and they'll get more crits. On top of that, Lashing Flames comes into play once you get a Hot Hand proc. So the cooldown of Lava Lash is, of course, 9 seconds. But if you get a Hot Hand proc, it's like 2 seconds. And so what you can do is you initially start with your Flame Shock into Lava Lash and you spread it around. And then you're kind of waiting for a Hot Hand proc. Once you get a Hot Hand proc, you tab target through all these enemies. See? Tab, 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 tab. You tab target, Lava Lash. Tab target, Lava Lash. Tab target, Lava Lash, tab target, Lava Lash. Once you do that, it'll put the Lashing Flames debuff on them, and now your Flame Shocks are doing double damage, and they have 50% crit from Skybreakers. That's the combo you're looking for. Why is this even good at all? Well, Flame Shock actually does a lot of damage. Flame Shock does 4,500 fire damage, all on its own. Storm Strike only does 3,300 damage. Lava Lash does about 2,200 damage. If you get a Hot Hand proc, Lava Lash gives 75% higher, which is about 1,600 more damage on top of 2,200. So it ends up being almost a 4K hit. If you have a Hot Hand proc with Lava Lash, it's a 4K hit. So that's pretty big. It's better than Storm Strike. But it's not better than Flame Shock still. I know Flame Shock is an 18-second duration. But my point is, if you're making Flame Shocks do double damage with Lashing Flames, so instead of 4,000 damage, they'll do 8,000 damage. Actually, 4,500, 9,000 damage over 18 seconds, and they have 50% crit. That's disgusting. It's a crazy amount of damage. It's really, really, really good. So I just want to mention that really quick. We're going to get back into the strengths of the build in a second, but this is the talent tree you want to run. You want to run Elemental Spirits, of course, because of the tier set bonus. Let me talk about that really quick. The tier set bonus, the 4 set is irrelevant for us, but the 2 set is really good. Spending Maelstrom Weapon has a 3% chance per stack to summon a Feral Spirit. That means we have a 15% chance, right? 3 times 5 is 15. Every time we press Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt, 15% chance to summon a wolf. Why does that matter? Well, because Elemental Spirits can give you a Fire Wolf. And if you get a Fire Wolf, you do 20% more fire damage while he's up for 8 seconds. 20% more damage. Imagine if you have a Flame Shock out and it's doing 4,500 damage. What's 20% of that? I think it's like 800 and something, right? Let's look at this really quick. 4,500 times 8%. 4,500. I gotta write this in here. 4,500 times 8%. That's 360 damage. Now, or 20%. Why am I doing 8%? I'm crazy. 20%. Sorry, guys. 4,500. Clear. 4,500 times 20%. There we go. 900 damage, right? So each Flame Shock is going to do 900 additional damage. Each one of them while that dog is up. If you have 5 Flame Shocks out, that's 4,500 damage you're doing per second more. 9 times 5, 4,500, right? This is how crazy this starts to add up. It's really, really crazy how this gets. If you have a Fire Dog up, you're doing 20% more fire damage. Your Flame Shocks are going to be doing 4,500 more damage if you have 5 of them per second. And then they have 50% more crit. What if they're all critting? That's 9,000 damage per second more. See how quickly that adds up? On top of that, your Fire Nova is going to do more damage, and your Lava Lash is going to do more damage because they're also fire abilities, right? If you have 2 Fire Dogs out, you're doing 40% more fire damage. It's just disgusting. It gets really, really stupid. What if you get a Hot Hand proc in the middle of 2 Fire Dogs being up? It does 40% more damage. Are you kidding me? It's just crazy. It gets really crazy. So the tier set, the 2-piece bonus is very, very strong for us. The 4-piece bonus is kind of irrelevant because it has to do with Storm Strike. But we're looking for that 2-piece bonus. That's the tier set. What Covenant / Soulbind are you going to be? Of course, you're going to be Venthyr. Now, I also think I'm going to recommend that you go Theatar. There's some value in Nadia for sure with the crit down here from after Euphoria ends. You get 20% more crit, but I think it's overkill because we're getting 50% more crit on our Flame Shocks. Here's the important thing you want to remember for Theatar. You want to remember Soothing Shade, you want to remember Wasteland Propriety, and you want to remember the tea. So the Party Favors lets you drink a tea that he gives you, and it's right here in my inventory. Let me show you this tea. I'm going to drink it right now. And what do we get? We got Agility by 3%. So now we're just doing 3% more damage. That's pretty sick. Thank you, Theatar. That's the first thing you need to think about. That's a really great one. Number 2, I think you're going to run Wasteland Propriety over running an additional potency conduit. And that's because Wasteland Propriety gives you, 6% versatility after you cast Chain Harvest, and it gives it to you for 14 seconds. And you might think, well, Chain Harvest is a 1.5 minute cooldown, so that's not a very good buff. Except it's not with Skybreakers. When you have Skybreakers, plus the Chain Harvest Legendary, which we're going to have in 9.2, from the Cinch here, right? Or the Clasp of Unity, sorry. 5 friendly targets get Riptide cast on them. 5 enemy targets get Flame Shock put on them. And those Flame Shocks are now doing 50% more crit. They're critting 50% more often. Flame Shock critical strikes reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest by 1 second. Oh, okay. So what ends up happening, as you guys have seen in my other videos, is that Chain Harvest goes from a 1.5 minute cooldown to a 20-second cooldown on average. And so if you're casting Chain Harvest every 20 seconds and you're getting a versatility buff for 14 seconds, that's basically going to be up permanently. You can see a little tiny example of this right here. If we go to test number 3, this test was 32 seconds long. I cast Chain Harvest twice in a 32-second period. Twice. That means I cast it every 16 seconds. That means I have my Wasteland Propriety buff up for, 80% of that fight. Now, obviously, you're going to try and replicate that over and over and over again. But the point is to say that Wasteland Propriety is going to be up all the time. And if you're doing the Skybreakers build, it's basically focused really, really hard around Chain Harvest, which means that you want to be having Wasteland Propriety up. So you want Soothing Shade, Wasteland, and you want the T. That's it. And the 550 Mastery, of course, is self-explanatory. It gives you more fire damage, which is all we're really invested in. So those are the talents. There's the tier set bonus interaction I want to talk about. There's the Covenant Soulbind I want to talk about. So once again, let's shift back into what is strong about this build. What are the strengths of this build? And also, of course, what are the weaknesses of this build? Because it's important to talk about that too. Number 1, the strengths of this build are consistent AoE. Pack to pack to pack to pack to pack. You're going to have consistent AoE all the time. Chain Harvest is going to be, on average, a 20 to 25 second cooldown in Mythic Plus, which means you have it on every single pack, which is huge. This thing does tons of damage. On top of that, it has tons of off healing, which is really cool. And you get consistently passive AoE damage with all your Flame Shocks, which means if you have to move out of melee to respect a mechanic that's going to kill you or kill everybody else, your Flame Shocks are still ticking for 50%. Sorry, they're still ticking for potentially double the damage from Lashing Flames, and then they have 50% more crit. So they're continuing to reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest. They're doing all their damage passively, which is amazing. That's really, really helpful in lots of dungeons when you need to be moving around a lot and dodging stuff. And it's just awesome to have passive damage like that. So that's really, really strong. Where is it weak? Potentially in single target. Certainly. I think the single target portion of this build is weaker than, say, something like Primal Lava Actuators, which we're going to get into in the next video. Primal Lava Actuators is buffing the damage of your Lava Lash, which is like a funnel build. You're taking all the Flame Shock damage that you have, that you're spreading all over the place, and you're taking it all and you're funneling it into a huge Lava Lash every single time you hit Lava Lash. That's more of a single target focus. This is the AoE version of that. It's not focused on Lava Lash, it's focused on Flame Shock, and you're doing passive ticking damage. It's just ding, 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 all these numbers all over the place, right? Really, really solid. So it certainly has lower value on single target. Now, there's a caveat here. Sorry, the other thing is that you're on single target, your Chain Harvest will not cool down as quickly. Your Chain Harvest cooldown on one single target will probably be something like 45 seconds to a minute versus 20 seconds because you only have one Flame Shock out, which is ticking. Now, that being said, in Mythic Plus, this is definitely changing, right? So we're getting the new encrypted affix. I'm just going to say this really quickly. The new encrypted affix basically says on every boss, you'll have 3 relics at the start of the boss fight, which means if you have Chain Harvest ready to go, which you should, you can get a huge cleave hit there on the Chain Harvest, and it'll add a bunch of Flame Shocks, which means that you'll get cooldown reduction on your Chain Harvest. You guys have seen this in the Halls of Atonement video that I did, I think, on this. On top of that, once the 3 relics are dead, they'll spawn an Automa, and he's much, much tougher, which means you'll have 2 target cleave for another like 30-40 seconds of the boss fight. Those are really significant buffs to this build because it's adding 4 target cleave and 2 target cleave to the boss fight, which means Skybreakers is going to lose less value overall because it's not a pure single target fight. The more targets you can put Flame Shock on, the better this build will do. And in Mythic Plus, every single boss has cleave for the first like minute of the fight. So that's really good for us. That's really good for this build, and it means that it loses less value in single target. Certainly in a single target raid scenario, this build's not going to do as well because you're just not going to, it's just not going to function the way you want it to. Okay? Moving forward. Those are the strengths of the and weaknesses of the build. We talked about the talents, the tier set integration, the Covenant, and Soulbind. Let's look at a demonstration of how this works. Once again, I'm going to show you guys that the combo here. So you want to get your totem out first. You don't care about that. Make sure it's down. You're going to go Flame Shock into Lava Lash. Then you're going to summon your wolves and hope to get a Fire Wolf. Then you're going to do one last Flame Shock over here maybe. And then you're going to detonate everything with Fire Nova. And then we're going to get into Chain Harvest. Ready? Flame Shock, Fire, Lava Lash, Dogs. Flame Shock. Lava Lash, Spread, Dogs. We're going to crash for a second. Sundering. Get another Flame Shock out. We're going to do our this. And then we're going to detonate. And then we're going to go. Go, 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 go. Remember to press Lava Lash on cooldown. We have Fire Dog out right now. That Fire Dog is giving us 20% more fire damage. Which means every time we detonate Fire Nova, boom. It's gone. Make sure you keep Lava Lashing on cooldown to spread the Flame Shocks. It will continue to refresh your Flame Shocks. Chain Harvest is back. Look at that. We're going to press it. We got a Hot Hand proc. Let's go. Tab target. Lava Lash. Storm Strike. Lava Lash. Tab target. Storm Strike. Oh, we're going to detonate. And then we're going to Lava Lash again. Waiting for a Hot Hand proc. Let's get that additional Flame Shock out over here. We have a Fire Dog up right now. Here comes Chain Harvest. It's back already. Because this is how fast the look. Watch the cooldown of Chain Harvest. Look at it go. 2 Fire Dogs. Oh, we lost Fire Dog. That's okay. Look at the Chain Harvest cooldown. It's insane, guys. Make sure you Lava Lash to keep spreading Flame Shocks. Add this additional Flame Shock over here. Boom, boom, boom. Detonate with Fire Nova. Keep going. Chain Harvest is coming back. We're going to press Chain Harvest. Then we're going to wait for one more rotation of Chain Harvest, and then we're good. So Chain Lightning, Crash. Detonate with Fire Nova. Lava Lash is coming. We want a Hot Hand proc if we can get one. We're getting unlucky with those, unfortunately. Here's a Hot Hand proc. Hot Hand. Tab target. Lava Lash. Tab target. Lava Lash. Chain Harvest. Tab target. Lava Lash. Now we have 4 Lashing Flame buffs. And we got Theatar. Look at our Mastery. Oh, it went off there. That's okay. Detonate with Fire Nova. We have a Lava Lash still. We have Hot Hands proc still. We got it twice in a row. There you go. You can see how it goes. See how our damage ramped up at the end there? We were doing like 16k. We got the Hot Hand proc for a while, and then suddenly went to 18k. Would you look at that? Our Flame Shocks are doing the bulk of our damage, right? That is exactly what the rotation looks like. Let's move this over here. Okay. So you're going to see pretty consistently, Flame Shock ends up being 30% of your damage overall because of these two things. Lashing Flames. What's going on? Lashing Flames. And, of course, the Skybreakers. Double damage on Flame Shocks. 50% more crit on Flame Shocks. That equals this damage right here. Flame Shock damage. Now, let's look at another thing. Let's look at all the other things we were talking about. Oh, look at this. Oh, that's Bad Duke's Tea, sorry. Wasteland Propriety, 63%. We had 6% more versatility for 63% of that fight. That's really good. That fight was 2 minutes long. Not even 2 minutes long. We Chain Harvest 5 times. 5 times, guys, in 2 minutes. 3, 6. That's every 25 seconds. That's exactly, basically every 25 seconds. Right? So that's what you get. We almost had actually a 6th one, but that's the point. The dogs, of course, are buffing our fire damage. I don't know if we can see how many times we had the Molten Weapon going for 33%. That's the Fire Dog's dot that he puts on, right? Just insane. The uptime on the versatility from Wasteland Propriety is really good. The uptime on Chain Harvest is insane. It's doing tons and tons of damage all on its own. You know, it crit for 22k a couple times, 6 times it looks like. So, and on top of that, sorry, your Flame Shock damage is just going to be absolutely king. So that's the demonstration of like how the build works, and that's what you're going to want to run. So I'll just recap it really quick. Obviously, your talents are going to be Lashing Flames, Hot Hand, Fire Nova. You're going to take Theatar. You're going to make sure you have the Shade, plus Wasteland Propriety, plus the Tea. On top of that, you do need to run the Chain Harvest Conduit. I forgot to mention that, but this is really important. The crit chance of Chain Harvest goes up because if Chain Harvest crits, it reduces its own cooldown on top of Skybreakers Flame Shocks reducing the cooldown as well. So you want both. You want to double dip on that. And that will get you the amount of uptime that we just had on Chain Harvest, which was 5 times in 2 minutes, which is really, really crazy. That's the build. That's how you want to run it, guys. One thing I just want to mention, a little caveat at the end here for Skybreakers moving into 9.2. Let me just say, first of all, where do you want to craft this thing? It can go on your chest or your finger. I'm obviously going to recommend that you put it on your finger. We talked about in the last video, there's safe places to craft your tier set gear, and there's also places that are not safe. Not to craft your tier set, to craft your legendary. Tier set gear is going to be on your helmet, shoulder, head, helmet, shoulder, chest, hands, feet, legs, and not your feet actually. Never mind. There it is. Just 5 pieces. So the major pieces: head, shoulders, chest, hands, and legs. So obviously the Skybreakers build could go on your chest, but you don't want to do that in case you get a drop from the raid or a drop from your Great Vault and you get a chest piece. So you want to be safe. Put it on a ring. Just put it on a ring. Then you're done. You're all done with it. This is where you want to craft this legendary. There, done and dusted. Now, one last note I want to make before I sign off here. Moving into 9.2, we do not get double legendaries right away, right? We'd actually are not going to get them until about 25 days into the patch, roughly. That's what people are estimating, right? So it's like there's the Zereth Mortis sort of story quest line you need to go do. You need to get to like chapter 7 before you can unlock the Clasp of Unity, all that kind of jazz. So you're not actually going to have either one of these effects moving in. You're gonna have to pick one of these. If you're gonna do this fire build, you're gonna have to pick one of these effects moving into 9.2, and you're not gonna have the other one. So my big question that I had to ask myself was, which one of these legendary effects is better? The Chain Harvest one, where it adds 5 flame shocks for free, and every time it crits, it reduces the cooldown of Chain Harvest by 1 second, or 50% more crit on flame shock? Which one of these is better coming into 9.2 before you can even get your double legendaries? That's a great question. What I have concluded is that you should actually start with Skybreakers. I know it sounds kind of insane, but I was just testing this. I was doing a DPS check with both of these different ones, and it's actually just better to have the Flame Shock crits. And here's a couple things that are happening in 9.2 that are really, 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 really important, which is why these fire builds are good in the first place. Number one, first and foremost, Lava Lash spreads flame shocks. That's happening on day 1 of the patch. That is happening right away. So that's important to understand, because it means that any Lava Lash build that you want to run is already better on day 1 of the patch than it used to be right now on live servers, because we get to spread flame shocks for free. On top of that, this Chain Harvest effect that happens with this Chain Harvest legendary, the critical strikes reducing the cooldown of Chain Harvest by 1 second, that also happens on day 1 of the patch. So if you have the Chain Harvest legendary crafted right now, you do not get this effect, but moving into 9.2, you will automatically get this effect now, that your Flame Shocks will reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest by. So that gives value to either one of these legendaries. You can pick whichever one you want, but I was just running a test with not equipping this. Like, I didn't have my belt on, basically, and so I didn't have the extra effect from Elemental Conduit. I think I needed to reload, actually. I'm just going to do that really quick. And it turns out that Skybreakers just does more damage. The Flame Shock passive critting damage is just better. It doesn't reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest really quickly, so that's the thing that changes with the build. So you can see my buffs are gone here now. I'll show you this one more time, really, in action. What this means is that you're not going to have big cooldown reduction on Chain Harvest, but you will still have big damage from Flame Shock, and that actually turns out to be better. So let's get this down here. Here's what you're going to want to do. Same rotation. You do Flame Shock into Lava Lash, spread it around and detonate it with Fire Nova, but you're no longer getting extra Flame Shocks from Chain Harvest, and Chain Harvest cooldown is not as quick. So we go here and do this. We're going to do our Wolves. We're going to spread one more Flame Shock, and then we're going to detonate with Fire Nova, and then we do Chain Harvest, and there we go. Chain Harvest just does big damage. Look at the cooldown of Chain Harvest. It's not being reduced. It's not going down on its own. So you're going to see our damage ends up being a little bit less, but it's not that much less. Spread your Flame Shock over here. again, because of the baseline changes that have now come in to Enhancement Shaman, we have this amazing spreading of Flame Shock effect that is just insane. Like, it's just the best. Oh, there's a guy right there. That guy talking about my videos. Doing one right now. So, again, like I wanted to just say, the spreading of the Flame Shock is really what makes this amazing. It makes it incredibly good. Obviously, obviously, the extra effect from the Chain Harvest, the fact that we're cooling down Chain Harvest and you get to cast Chain Harvest more often, it just does big damage. That is, of course, relevant and very, very good. And you can essentially make a choice on day one. Do you want to do Elemental Conduit, crafted wherever you want, or do you want to just get Skybreakers done and get it out of the way? My suggestion would be get Skybreakers done first. Get it done first, put it on your ring, and then you can get the Clasp of Unity later, and you won't even have to craft the second legendary. You get it for free once you get this Clasp of Unity, right? So you don't have to craft a second legendary. That's got to be the best way to do it. It's going to save you a bunch of time, which is really, really important. But on top of that, I do think that just having Skybreakers without the Clasp of, without the Elemental Conduit buff on the Chain Harvest is the better way to go right out of the gates, because Lava Lash spreads Flame Shock. We get to spread so many Flame Shocks so easily, and they're all critting, and you're making them all do double damage. All that stuff is still there with the just having one legendary, which is Skybreakers. So I really, really think moving into 9.2, start with Skybreakers, and then you'll get the Clasp later, and you'll get the extra effect of the Chain Harvest of giving you all those Flame Shocks. Okay, so that is it. That is the that's the whole build. That's Skybreakers. Let me just do a really quick rundown of the entire conclusion of the video that we just did. What does the legendary do? Of course, it gives us 50% crit on Flame Shock. Why does that matter? Well, it's going to increase our stat priority on Mastery. Mastery is going to be a much better stat now because you're getting 50% crit for free. What are the talents that you're going to run? Lashing Flames, Hot Hand, Fire Nova. That's the rotation. You go Flame Shock into Lava Lash and you detonate it with Fire Nova. That's what you want to do there. What Covenant are you going to pick? You're going to pick Venthyr. You're going to pick Theatar. You're going to make sure you have Soothing Shade. You want this Chain Harvest conduit right here. Absolutely. You want to go Wasteland Propriety, and you want to go Party Favors. I mean, this is what you're going to take anyway. You're not going to take Magma Fist because there's less of an emphasis on Lava Lash. There's more of an emphasis on Chain Harvest. Now, having said that, like I just mentioned, when you first step foot in 9.2 on day one, if you only have Skybreakers, you actually should take the Magma Fist one and maybe put it over here instead of going Wasteland Propriety, because you're not going to have uptime on Chain Harvest in the same way. So I would actually put the Lava Lash Conduit over here and go this direction instead. Does that make sense? Because you're going to be pressing Lava Lash a lot, and you're not going to be pressing Chain Harvest a lot because it's not cooling itself down as much. Those are the Covenants, Soulbind. The tier set interaction, of course, we really care about the 2-set bonus because we want to spend Maelstrom and create a Fire Dog and buff our damage by 20%. If you get 2 Fire Dogs, it's 40% more fire damage. That's why you're also running Elemental Spirits, okay? That is the whole build right there. And, of course, I mentioned the rotation a second ago. It really is centered around Chain Harvest once you get both legendary effects online. And again, it's really, really strong because it has passive damage that if you have to respect mechanics during a boss fight or a raid encounter, then you can do that. And you can still do lots of passive damage because the Flame Shocks are just going to be critting and doing damage all on their own. So that is the build. That's Skybreakers for Enhancement Shaman. I think this is the most exciting build that I'm ready for in 9.2. This is what I'm going to be running in 9.2. I'm pretty sure. I have to do some more testing, but I'm pretty sure this is the one that I'm going to be doing. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for all the likes and subscribes. We kind of blew past 500 subs. Keep subscribing if you like the content that you're seeing here, and I will see you in the next one.